history of retro gaming has proven anything, it is that the SNES had so many incredible games. From Super Metroid to Final Fantasy VI to Super Castlevania IV, the system offered a variety of classics that were very well known and widely played. Nevertheless, many of the system's best games were simply overshadowed, whether it was due to lack of marketing, a lower number of copies published, or released by a lesser-known publisher. Some SNES games were every bit as good as their renowned counterparts. These 10 hidden SNES gems are still worth playing today, despite the lack of attention they got in their heyday. People define hidden gem in several different ways, but for the purposes of this video, I'm considering a game as such if it was great for its genre, despite having a lack of notoriety. Many of the games on my list were also not marketed well, sold relatively few copies, or were incredibly hard to find. With that said, let's get into my top 10 SNES hidden gems. At number 10 is Super Baseball Simulator 1000, which came out mere months after the system was released. On the surface, the game plays like a pretty typical baseball game for its era, but this one has a huge twist. This game allows you to fully customize your own team, even to the extent of allowing you to choose the color of your uniforms and names of your players. The best part of this process is that you can customize each of the players to give them special abilities they can use on the baseball field. For instance, hitters can be assigned a missile hit that launches the ball and drives any fielder in its way all the way back to the wall. Similarly, there's a bomb hit that makes it impossible for an opponent to catch. Instead, they just get blasted to the ground, forced to watch as their buddy has to help field it. Pitching works in the same way. By assigning each of your pitchers various powers, you can do things like employ an absurd, unhittable curveball against your opponent if your control is good enough. Likewise, you can use a super fastball that travels at an incredible speed, and even launch a looping ball that is almost impossible for the batter to track. Overall, the game is just goofy and awesome. It was so fun to play with two players, and I spent countless hours with my friends trying to design the best team we could with the craziest and most unfair special abilities. The game is comical and the special powers are unbalanced, but if you take it too seriously, you're missing out on the fun this game offers. My SNES hidden gem number 9 is Xygor, The Final Conflict. This was an awesome action platformer published by Hudson Soft. You play as a cyborg ninja that is attempting to find a holy grail that was stolen by a rival ninja clan. No, not that holy grail. The main character only survived because his body was infused with advanced technology. Throughout the stages, Xygor can switch between 4 different weapons: a sword, chain, shuriken, and grenades. Also, special attacks can be used to clear the screen of enemies. You can also wall jump, slide on the ground, and do really awesome jump somersaults to push yourself forward. On the surface, this game seems to have ripped off some elements of the Shinobi games for Genesis, but it's actually pretty different from those. The dark theme and graphics are also fantastic, and the boss encounters were really well made too. Finally, the animations really made this game come to life. If you're familiar with my channel, you know I'm a sucker for games that have great animations, and this one definitely does. This game is incredibly rare, but it's also one of the best action titles on the system. Number 8 is Shadowrun, an isometric adventure game released in 1993. The game takes place in 2050, and the main character is gunned down in the street in the intro. After awakening with amnesia, he sets out to track down his would-be assassins to discover why they were after him. This game is heavy on exploration and gives the player the power to do almost anything with a cursor. This allows the player to converse with other characters, enter passages, pick up items, and a host of other things. The game forces you to be on your toes as you find assassins almost everywhere that fire upon the main character. Throughout Shadowrun, you collect karma, which are essentially experience points that allow you to increase your skills and attributes. The real fun in this game comes from the challenges to overcome, especially the surprise attacks. Despite being an absolute commercial failure, this game has a cult following and it's pretty easy to see why. Shadowrun was just so unique for the time, and the story was gripping. Hidden gem number 7 is Cybernator, a mech platforming action game with its own futuristic style. The game was known as Assault Suits Vulcan in Japan, and it was actually the sequel to the Sega Genesis game Target Earth, which itself was called Assault Suit Leinos in Japan. Confusing, I know, but who cares about that because this game is good. You play as a dude named Jake who intends to destroy Buildvord, an ultra-powerful enemy mech. The game plays as a series of missions leading up to this objective. Along the way, you're faced with exploding corridors, rapid-firing enemies, and an assortment of gameplay styles. The futuristic elements are just fun, and the game is oozing with cyberpunk theme. The variety of weapons in this game is just awesome too. My favorite is the laser, which just rips through enemies. Sometimes your action is interrupted by unexpected dialogue, but this annoyance can be forgiven because this game is just so solid. Coming in at number 6 is Gemfire, an addictive strategy game from Koei. It was released on the NES as well, and it shows. Admittedly, this game has horrendous graphics, but it's still awesome because it requires you to make tough choices to win. Unlike many of the other Koei strategy games, this one is set in a fantasy world on a mythical island, but it does seem reminiscent of medieval England. There are two types of gameplay: world map planning and battles. In the world map section, your objective is to control the whole map of 30 regions despite the presence of 4 rival families. To overcome the other families, you can move units, bolster your defenses, trade with others, and even create alliances with other families to benefit your own. When you attack adjacent territories, you can move several different types of units, like infantry, cavalry, archers, and even mythical beasts to attack the enemy. The cavalry encounters are just awesome. Also, each player's experience is different because there are different characters to choose from. This game will seem primitive to some players, but don't let the game's optics fool you. Even though it doesn't have stunning graphics or anything like that, it's a great game beneath the surface, and it's definitely worth playing today. My number 5 hidden gem of the SNES is Aerobiz Supersonic, also from Koei, where you play the role of a startup airliner CEO. This premise alone was a surprising departure from almost every other game on the system, but the game isn't as boring as it may sound. As a simulator, the primary objective is to build a thriving business from the ground up. In this sequel to the first Aerobiz, you must first select from one of the great eras of commercial flight, including the dawn of jets, the late Cold War, and even an era in the future. From there, you choose the region you wish to operate in. As the CEO, you have to decide where you want to create regular flights, choose and allocate your planes, and engage in diplomacy to open new business. The game's fun comes from the history of your growth as a startup to a player on the international scene, and experiencing the political dynamics in the world and impact on your company also adds a challenge. Aerobiz Supersonic is basically the Sim City of airlines, so if you like that game, I think you'll enjoy this one as well. In at number 4 is Magic Sword, an arcade-style side-scrolling action-adventure game. In this one, you play as a warrior attempting to stop a Dark Lord holding a powerful orb. A revolutionary theme, I know. However, I think this game just shines through its setting and level design. You must climb the 51 floors of a magical tower, and best the enemies that come with it. Especially awesome in this game is the magical allies you encounter throughout the tower, each of which has separate strengths and weaknesses to assist you. The action is fun, the fantasy theme was done really well, and the bosses were well designed. This was just a great game to pick up and play anytime, and I would recommend it to anyone. Number 3 is Space Megaforce from Compile, the same company that created the Guardian Legend for the NES. This game is an awesome scrolling shooter that has been overlooked by many. One of the best parts of the game is the wide variety of weapons, each of which can be powered up. In total, there are 8 weapon archetypes, and by collecting chips on each of the stages, they get more powerful. As your weapon powers up, so does your life potential. Your ship's life is tied to the weapon level, and getting hit causes you to lose 4 levels of power. If you get hit when the weapon is at level 0, you die. This was an interesting system for 2 reasons. First, it effectively incentivized power-up collection, and it also escaped a reputation of the genre of being unfair, because the player's ship could take multiple hits before a death. This made it unlike many other shooters. Graphically, Space Megaforce is also quite good for a game that came out in 1992. The game isn't perfect, but I think it's definitely one of the top 5 scrolling shooter games on the system, and it's worth a play for sure. Star Ocean comes in at number 2. For this one, I admit I'm cheating a little bit because this game didn't come out in the US. However, there's a translation patch for it, so it can easily be played today. In my opinion, this is the best Super Famicom game that never came out in North America, and it's an absolute hidden gem. Star Ocean was the start of an incredible franchise, and it clearly was influenced by science fiction and Star Trek. However, the actual game plays out in a fantasy environment. Combat here really shines, and it's an action RPG hybrid that combines the best elements of games like Secret of Mana with Final Fantasy. Special attacks can be assigned to each character, and they can even be strung together in combos. There's even voice acting for these attacks, which was an incredible feat for the SNES. The game was also ambitious story-wise, and it is only possible to get certain characters on the basis of decisions you make throughout the game. The graphics, sound, and music are all great, and this game was one of the best RPGs on the system. If you can find this game today, play it now. The number one hidden gem on the SNES is Ogre Battle March of the Black Queen. The game was made by Quest, and it only shipped 25,000 units in North America, making it incredibly hard to come by. The game received some praise, but there just weren't enough copies of the game for its greatness to spread from word of mouth, and it's a real shame. This is, bar none, the best strategy game on the SNES. It's also incredibly customizable. At the beginning of the game, you're forced to answer a series of questions that determine how your character is set up. The combat takes place like a traditional RPG, but you don't control the individual characters. Instead, the game focuses upon the placement of units, the composition of your army, and the usage of tarot cards that produce powerful effects. There are also 13 distinct different endings you can get, depending on your actions during the game. Some are better than the others, making it fun to try to get them all. This system added some replay value that other titles didn't offer. If you agree with the top 10 hidden gems I selected, or thought that I left some out, leave me a comment below. If you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel, and click the bell below to be alerted upon the addition of new ones. Also, please consider supporting my channel via YouTube's Join feature to receive member exclusives such as advanced videos and complete video transcripts.